Dino, what do you think of the 50-30-20 rule?
Explain that. What is that?
Okay, 50% of your income goes towards your living expenses. 30% of your income is disposable to be spent however you want, and 20% goes into savings.
So 50 is what? Necessities?
Yes, yeah, living expenses,
Living expenses.
necessities,
And
all of
then
that.
30 is supposed to be discretionary.
Going out, clothes.
Okay. And then 20 is savings.
Yes.
In what context people use that, or people are telling other people to use that, or
It's an old school rule where people, just say it's a good rule of thumb to live by.
yeah, maybe it is a good rule of thumb to live by, but I don't think you can make it that like it's not like unilaterally like applicable to everything. You always use this rule, right? Here's the problem. Discretionary versus living expenses, for example, right? A lot of people's living expenses have a lot of elements of discretionary, right? You want to drive a 50, you want to go, make payments on a $50,000 car or a $30,000 car. It's a necessity, it's a living expense,
Right.
but the discretionary comes in when, how much you want to push it on that, right? So
what you're saying is you shouldn't necessarily
but also
max
like
out
it's
your
also
50.
well also the 50% thing. Here's the problem, right? Like it gets really complicated too. Like your shelter, like rent or whatever. Let's call it rent because people in mortgages, to me it's just different. You try to stay within the 50, for example. You can only afford X amount of rent. Let's just say you've done the math, right? But what if X amount of rent makes you commute a much longer way, and it causes you a lot more time versus paying double the rent but making it more convenient for you, and you have more time, and so it gets complicated. So yeah, maybe it's a good rule of thumb, but it's a starting point. I agree, but definitively 50-30-20, I don't think that's
Or only 20%
here's
saved.
really simple. Like life, it's really simple, right? Every time you spend every penny, right, you have to be cognizant of like what's your goal. I mean, realistically, what's your goal? Especially in general, is to save as much as you can, because everyone's goal in life really is to freaking not having to work as you get older and retire, and the only way you do that is by saving. So you should run it by. I mean, it just boils down to the good old adage of like, don't waste money. Don't waste money. Do you really need something you want to buy? Do you really need that car? Do you need to go stay in that bougie place? Do you really need to go buy that furniture? Do you really need to go buy clothes like that? The only thing I would say you really need to do is save. Whether it be a lot or less, but that should be on the forefront of your mind. The problem is most people
So
don't think
maybe
that way.
saving is more like 40% for you.
There's
or
not a percentage.
30%.
You can. It's difficult.
But you think it weighs more, it's more
It
important.
should be given. I don't look at it as 50 this is. Just say every decision you make, you should try and be practical, responsible, and reasonable in your expenditures, and your goal should be saving as much as you can, stashing as much cash at the end of the month as you can, right? The frugal people, what you always say about frugal people, right? They dress really plainly, their shoes are all like messed up or whatever, they live in a terrible apartment or whatever, but that dude has like millions of bucks in the bank.
Yep.
Kind of like that, right? It's kind of how I think. I don't necessarily think for you to be like that, but you should kind of think that way as your starting point, I think. That's it.
Cool.